Clemson Tiger fans, welcome back to another edition of the Clemson Sports Show. I'm your host, Joseph Hastings, and joining me as always is Matt Connolly. We're here to recap Clemson versus UConn, which, Matt, it wasn't a close game. The final box score didn't indicate a close game, but that first half, it got a little bit scary for Clemson, especially with UConn getting that kickoff return. First play of the game there. What did you think about the Tigers' performance? It felt like even though they won by 37 points, it was a little bit of a letdown.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't the dominant performance I think that we all thought we were going to see just against a really, really overmatched UConn team. At no point in the game was I like, oh, man, Clemson could actually lose or, they're in trouble or anything like that. It was nothing like that. But at the same time, it also just wasn't really the dominant, particularly the defense did exactly what it was supposed to do. The defense showed up, took care of business, held UConn to negative rushing yards, just really controlled every aspect of UConn's offense. The special teams, kickoff coverage, not so great. A couple of long returns, obviously the one big one with the starting kickoff unit in. And then just offensively, man, it was just a struggle way more than I thought it would be. They ended up with 99 plays and nearly 500 yards, but the yards per play was way down. And that was more so because what Clemson's defense did is what allowed them to have so many plays and yards and that kind of stuff. 5 for 22 on third down against UConn. And it wasn't all just, backups in. I think it was 4 for 16 at one point with the starters in. DJ at one point missed 8 consecutive throws. He ended up 21 of 44, so under 50% completion. Just, and as concerning as anything for me was just an inability to do much in the running game against UConn's defensive front. That's obviously not stout by any stretch of the imagination. So, yeah, not the best 37-point win you can have for sure.
Yeah, I think you have to be disappointed with what the offense displayed on Saturday. Just drop passes, DJ being off once again. And this was the game where we had talked about in the previous podcast. I thought Clemson would be able to continue the momentum they established those previous 2 games in the passing attack, and DJ would be able to have some more confidence. That's why I was in favor of him playing. But he shouldn't have played. He shouldn't have played on Saturday. I think this potentially does more to hurt his confidence than it does to help. He looked off. As you mentioned, he had a stretch where he had 8 straight incompletions. Could have been 9 straight if it wasn't for intentional grounding call. So there's just a lot going on with this offense that doesn't make sense to me, because it feels like even with the injuries that they do have, their multiple starters were held out on Saturday. We should note, Will Shipley didn't play. He didn't get any carries. Kobe Pace didn't play. That it feels like this offense should still be able to operate at a higher level than it displayed against UConn. Matt, what was your biggest takeaway from this game? Looking at whether it's a specific position group, the offense as a whole, the team as a whole, what was your biggest takeaway?
Yeah, I think there were 2 things. I think, first of all, it was just DJ being so inaccurate and looking like, he just didn't seem comfortable with his leg out there. And so, I know Dabo said he practiced great, which we've heard all year about how great Clemson's been practicing, and it's not translating, that's for sure. But yeah, he just didn't look comfortable. He had the one really good drive where he was able to lead down for a touchdown right before the half, but otherwise it was just a lot of ugliness. So that was one, just DJ being so accurate, and then the other is just Clemson averaging 3.1 yards per carry, and his top back, who was healthy, who actually played in the game, Phil Maffa, had 17 carries for 49 yards, which, man, you think going into that game against that UConn defense, if Phil Maffa gets 17 carries, he's probably going to easily have 100 yards and maybe a couple touchdowns. So just an ugly performance by the offense. We did see some good things for sure. Dakari Collins stepped up. Jake Brenning still had a couple of nice grabs. So it wasn't all bad, but just not the consistency you would want to see against an opponent like UConn.
I got to give you a shout out on that one, because we ran a roundtable piece on Friday at ClemsonSports.com, and you said that Dakari Collins was going to lead Clemson in receiving. He had 97 yards this game, had only 18 going into this game. He had 2 receptions for 18 yards against SC State. This whole season, he only had 18 yards. So that was a really good call. I think for me, the biggest takeaway, I think for me, the biggest takeaway was what happened on Clemson's first touchdown. You're gonna have to resort to a fake field goal and run it up with Will Sweeney to score against UConn. I mean, that's kind of sad right there. And speaking of going for it on fourth down, they had to go for it on fourth down 6 times. I think one of those was in garbage time later on in the game, but still, you had to go for it on fourth down multiple times in that first drive. UConn bailed them out with an offsides on 4th and 4 one time. But that's kind of the state of this offense, you know, and it's kind of sad to see because you had seen Clemson's offense been operating at such a high level in previous years that now they're having to go for it on fourth down against a 1-8 and now 1-9 Huskies team.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I mean, the first drive of the game, you know, they have 2 first downs that they have to convert, and then another fourth down where UConn's up. So, I mean, 3 times really they line up to go for it on fourth down just to end up getting a field goal out of it. So, man, yeah, it was not pretty.
Yeah, and what do you do from here? I mean, look, I know Wake Forest doesn't have the greatest defense in the world. We're going to get to that Wake Forest NC State game here in a second, but I mean, UConn's defense was one of the worst in the country coming into this game. They were one of the worst in sacks. They only had 11 total sacks, so the defensive line isn't that great. And to your point, Clemson should have rushed for more than 119 yards. You know, the defense is one of the worst in terms of yards allowed per game. So, you know, the fact that Clemson's offense looked the way it did, you know, where do you go from here against a South Carolina, against a Wake Forest to wrap up the season?
Yeah, I think you're going to have to lean on that running game. And look, to be fair, like we said, Will Shipley did not play. Kobe Pace did not play. Those are clearly far and away your top 2 running backs.
Yeah.
You know, they're going to get more yards after contact. They're going to run through the trash more. They're going to pick up some of those yards.
Also, Tyson Pumachan got hurt, and DJ obviously was hindered by the right knee injury. So,
yeah, so the QB run game didn't have much to do. Couldn't do much either. You're missing your starting right guard and Will Putnam, who was out again this past week, who Dabo said will be good to go Monday and will practice all week this week and be good to go. So, I mean, I think you're going to lean on that running game. You're going to try to probably control the clock, keep the ball away from Sam Hartman and that Wake Forest offense. You know, and I think he just, especially if Tyson's healthy, if he can go, I think he gets a good bit of snaps. He looked really comfortable yesterday making reads in the zone reads. He actually made a very nice back shoulder throw to Dakari Collins, which was probably the best throw we've seen from him this year. So, you know, I think if he gets some opportunities, he can help specifically in the running game a lot. Yeah, I think you're just going to lean on that run game and you know, hope they can look a lot better than they did against UConn.
All right, so let's get to Wake Forest because, you know, the Clemson UConn game, the final score was expected, or the final end result was expected. But the Wake Forest NC State game was not. You know, it was going to be a close game. We knew that going in, and you know they delivered a really good game on Saturday night. Wake Forest ended up winning 45-42 over NC State. Matt, you know, you got to see the game. You know, I watched the second half of it. What were your overall thoughts on it?
Yeah, it was a fun game, first of all. It was weird that it was only on ACC Network. You know, you got 2 top 20 teams, and maybe the top 2 teams, at least in the conversation in the ACC this year, are on ACC Network for a 7:30 game. But anyway, no, it was a fun game. I didn't think Wake Forest looked overly impressive. Just Sam Hartman was missing some throws. You know, they were without Roberson, one of their top wideouts, so they were a little banged up. They had a defender get ejected in the second half for targeting, so he'll miss the first half against Clemson. So, man, it's interesting. You know, obviously Hartman's a really good quarterback, even if he didn't play great. And they were going up against a good NC State defense, and you know, still did some nice things. So, I don't know. I don't have a great feel for how Wake Forest Clemson's going to go after watching that. I think part of it is going to depend on injuries. I mean, like I said, Wake Forest I think is really banged up right now. And then had a targeting thing as well. And Dave Clawson's really quiet when it comes to injuries. Just talking with some people on that NC State, on the Wake Forest beat, they said don't expect to hear a lot from injuries this week. So I'm interested to hear what they have to say. With all that said, you know, Wake Forest sloppy some, doesn't play great, and scores 45 points against NC State's defense. So man, they just find a way to put points up. Might not always be pretty, but they're going to score.
Yep, that leads right into my point. That was my big takeaway from the game. Sam Hartman has 3 interceptions, you know, under 50% completion, you know, just didn't look good. The running game wasn't incredible. They had 3 rushing touchdowns, but only about 119 or so yards rushing on the ground. So the combination of all of that would lead you to believe maybe they score 27, maybe they score 30, but for them to put up 45, that was incredible to me. It just shows how explosive that offense is. And then also NC State going into this game, the previous 3 games, they had only allowed 47 total points. So for Wake Forest to put up 45 like that and, have all the struggles that they had, and they had put up 52 against UNC the week before, I believe, the combination of that result and then also what we saw from Clemson's offense against a poor UConn defense has me a little bit concerned about this upcoming game. And we're going to do a little fun segment, a buy hold segment. We're going to talk about the Clemson Wake Forest game, but I don't see how Tiger fans can be necessarily too happy with what they saw, not only from their team, but how good Wake Forest offense looked in terms of the final result, putting up 45 points despite the struggles that they had.
Yeah, and I will point out too, Wake Forest defense was much better against NC State than it was the previous week against North Carolina. Mm-hmm. I mean, Sam Howell and Josh Downs, they just had huge games, and North Carolina pretty much did whatever it wanted to against Wake Forest. So I thought the defense from Wake Forest was much better this week. They did a decent job of getting some pressure. Just thought that they made some nice plays. But still, I mean, as good as NC State's defense is, I still would take Clemson's defense over theirs. And the fact that, Sam Hartman, like you said, struggled with turnovers some. I think Roberson, I think, who knows if he's going to play or not. Still banged up some. A.T. Perry had, I think, 5 catches on 22 targets.
Remind me of Clemson's third down statistic, 5 of 22 when I saw that.
Right. But neither of those are good. 5 of 22, whether you're making 5 of 22 catches or 5 of 22 on third down, neither of those are good. So, yeah, I mean, it was a decent performance for Wake Forest offense. Hartman was under 50% completion. Yeah, I mean, they just find a way to score points. I believe they got a defensive touchdown as well. They obviously benefited some from NC State's. NC State turned it over 3 times too. So not an overly clean game by either offense. Yeah, I mean, I think for Clemson to win, it's going to have to lean on its defense, which is what it's done all year, and then just hope it can get some things going on the ground and kind of control the line of scrimmage and play well there. But yeah, definitely not going to be easy.
So I'm kind of putting this game on the same level as the Pittsburgh game, and I don't know if you would agree with that in terms of, you're going to have a high-powered offense coming in. With the Pittsburgh game, they were going to Pittsburgh, but you're going to have a high-powered offense you're going up against. And we said the magic number, we called this one, the magic number to beat Pittsburgh was going to be 28 for Clemson. And the final score was 27-17, so, 28 would have won. I think you're going to need about 30 to 31 here against Wake Forest. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think Pitt's defense is better than Wake Forest, so maybe you can get there. But you're gonna have to play a lot better than you did Saturday for sure.
Yeah, it's funny. Wake Forest, you mentioned that they had the defensive touchdown, but they put up 45 against NC State. A top 20 team in the country that you still had a lot to play for. Still had an ACC championship berth that they're still in contention for. And Clemson only put up 44 against UConn. So that kind of gives me a little bit pause for concern here. But let's get right into that Wake Forest game. Matt, we're gonna do a little fun buy, sell, hold segment here. We're gonna go over a few topics. I'm gonna throw the first one out at you. You wrote a really good column today. We're talking about DJ and Tyson Pumachan. Potentially who may be the starter against Wake Forest. I'm gonna ask you that question: buy, sell, hold. Who starts against Wake Forest? I mean, does DJ start against Wake Forest?
Oh, I'm going to hold for now. I do think, though, I think DJ probably will start, even if Tyson is healthy. But there's no question who played better Saturday. It was Tyson. Now, that was also a very limited sample size. And it doesn't necessarily mean that he deserves a start or has played better all year. And Clemson's playbook certainly shrinks when he's in, just as far as what he can do in the passing game. But, I do think he played better Saturday. So I think it's at least worth a conversation. Of course, Tyson hurt his shoulder. We don't know the status yet of where he is. So that may not be an option. So for now, I'll hold. But I probably lean more towards buy DJ, at least start in the game. But I think Tyson will play some for sure.
Yeah, I'm going to hold for now, too. And look, the difference between DJ and Tyson, coming into the year throughout the course of the season has been DJ's a better passer than Tyson. Well, DJ's had 3 games this season. Actually, maybe 4. Correct me if I'm wrong. He's had 3 or 4 games this season in which he's under 50% completion. So he's not necessarily getting it done as a passer and completing passes with the level of efficiency that we would expect from him. And if Tyson can get to that number, 50, 51, 52%, hovering around where DJ's kind of been in some of these games, and he gives you an extra threat as a runner. We saw what Sam Howell was able to do against Wake Forest defense as a runner. I think maybe Tyson could be the way to go. Or like you mentioned earlier in this podcast, they're going to play him significantly more than he has in any other game this season. So, yeah.
Yeah, it is. By the way, it is four under 50%.
4 games under 50%. So, I mean, Tyson is someone we didn't view as that great of a passer, but, DJ isn't getting it done. He's not playing with that confidence. And Tyson definitely looked confident against UConn, whether that's because he's playing in front of his family, playing a team from his home state, whatever reason it was, he definitely played a lot better in the limited time that he played on Saturday. And let's kind of get into a little bit of some long-term, projections here. Clemson's path to the ACC is now pretty much clear. We know exactly how they're going to get to Charlotte if they're able to get there. So Wake Forest beat NC State. Now they need to lose to Clemson and Boston College. So those 2 games are road games for Wake Forest. And NC State would need losses to Syracuse or North Carolina. So the path is clear now. We know how Clemson can get to Charlotte. Matt, buy, sell, hold. Does Clemson get there?
I will sell. I just don't think it's going to happen. I just think there's too much that you need. I mean, obviously, getting a win this weekend would be huge, which I'm not sure how likely that is. But even if that does happen, I just don't see Wake Forest losing to Boston College unless Hartman gets injured or something crazy happens. And I know Boston College has its quarterback back, but I still just don't see that happening. What about you?
Yeah. I'm going with selling here just because I didn't like what I saw from the offense on Saturday, and I didn't like what Wake Forest was able to do production-wise on arguably a tough day offensively for them with the turnovers and struggles that Hartman had. So, yeah, I'm gonna sell this one. I think it could get interesting, that Wake Forest Boston College game, just because Wake Forest is gonna have a lot of pressure on them. They're gonna be in a position they haven't been before. With a chance to go to the ACC championship on the line. But yeah, I'm gonna sell this one. And we kind of did this one a little bit reverse. We could have done asked this in the same question, but let's get right into next week's game. We're going to have a full prediction on Friday. But, Matt, does Clemson beat Wake Forest, buy, sell, hold?
I'm going to hold for now, actually. I want to see if we get some more injury news this week. I want to see how Clemson's looking injury-wise, if Tyson's able to play. I want to see Wake Forest, if we get any injury news there, and hear some of their banged-up guys can go or not. So I'm going to hold for now. What about you?
Yeah, I think I'm going to sell. Once again, I don't like what we saw from them. I don't like, when you mentioned the injuries that they have, they're continuing to pile up injury after injury. I felt like they stalled some of the momentum they had built up against Louisville and Florida State. And Wake Forest is coming in with so much confidence. I know they had lost against North Carolina, but that wasn't a conference loss for them. They're still undefeated in ACC play. I'm going to sell this one. Last one for buy, sell, hold, Matt. This is the big one. This isn't just pertaining to this season. This is kind of looking beyond this year. Clemson is no longer the top dog in the ACC.
Man, I'm gonna hold on that as well. I don't know that you can say just after one down year, which hasn't even been. I mean, it's not like it's been a disaster of a year. They're 7-3. So I don't think it's been, obviously not the season anyone thought we would see, but it hasn't been a disaster of a year. But yeah, I'm going to wait and just, I don't think Wake Forest long term is going to be some huge juggernaut in the ACC. I don't think Pitt necessarily. I mean, they've got Kenny Pickett there right now. I don't know how good they're going to be when he leaves. Mac Brown's getting up there in age, obviously. So North Carolina's recruiting pretty well, but they're having a year that they didn't think they were going to either. So I would still lean Clemson right now. At least short-term future, I just still feel pretty good about where the program is, even if it hasn't been great this year. Yeah, I'll sell that.
Yeah, I'm going to sell it as well. Look, Clemson still has one of the best recruiting classes in the country. On On3's consensus rankings, they're number 4 in the nation. The top bottom, quarterback Cade Klubnik, wide receiver Adam Randall. The defensive back group is arguably the best in the country in the 2022 class. So they're still recruiting at a good level. There hasn't been any decommitments. All the commits are on their official visits to Clemson, and by all accounts, they look like they're having a good time there. I do think they're going to have to change their recruiting strategy just a little bit, though. They're going to have to adapt, and whether it's recruiting on the trail, the high school trail, or in the transfer portal, going to have to go to the transfer portal a little bit more, in my opinion. You're going to have to change some philosophies with recruiting. I don't think I'm in favor of waiting for official visits to be that long. We talked about it on the Tigers Den message board on ClemsonSports.com that, with Travis Shaw and Oscar Delp, two big-time targets for the Tigers, they weren't able to take official visits to the school. Now, I don't know if they land them if they do take those officials, but still, with the policy being waiting until the season, it may have hampered their chances with them a little bit. And then also switching over to the rest of the ACC in general. No other team has come out and lit the world on fire, in my opinion. Wake Forest is having a good year, but as you mentioned, I don't think they're going to be a powerhouse program in the ACC. So it's more so my lack of confidence in the ACC combined with Clemson still producing good results on the recruiting trail that leads me to believe that they'll still be the top dog, at least for the next few years. Yeah,
I think we agree on all of that.
Yep. So, that wraps up today's show, actually, because there wasn't much to talk about the Clemson UConn game. There were some struggles initially, but Clemson still won by 37. UConn didn't score an offensive touchdown. They didn't even have 100 yards of total offense. So defense did what they were supposed to do. Offense struggled. We could pretty much say that about every single game this season, right, Matt? I mean, that's pretty much been the theme of the whole year. So
yep, that's the story of the year for sure.
Story of the year. Defense doing their job, offense struggling. So let's see what the case is next week against Wake Forest. We're going to continue to have a couple more videos throughout this week. I'm going to be taking a big trip, to a big recruiting trip. I want to let everyone know we're going to see some big time targets. Maybe someone who visited this weekend. I don't know who it's going to be. We're kind of leaving it up in the air of who we're going to talk to, but it's going to be a big trip. Encourage you all to sign up for ClemsonSports.com if you haven't already. Take advantage of our great year deal where we're pretty much giving you a year full premium access for $10 or 4 months for $1. So be sure to sign up and subscribe to our YouTube page if you haven't already.
Yeah. Really encourage y'all to do that. Just check out the website. Come hang out on the message board, the Tigers Den. Subscribe and like our YouTube channel and help us continue to grow our content.
Yeah, we're at 110 YouTube subscribers. So thank you all for tuning in and continuing to tune in on these episodes. And we're going to continue to grow this base here. We really appreciate y'all. We're a new site. I'm a new face to the Clemson beat. So we really appreciate you all being able to welcome us in. And we're going to continue to have some great content in the future. Keep it locked in with Clemson Sports, everyone.